Welcome to a radio play of Bliss, a short story by Katherine Mansfield, published in 1918. I will be your narrator. Although Bertha Young was 30, she still had moments like this when she wanted to run instead of walk, to take dancing steps on and off the pavement, to bowl a hoop, to throw something up in the air and catch it again, or to stand still and laugh at nothing simply.
What can you do if you are 30 and, turning the corner of your own street, you are overcome, suddenly, by a feeling of bliss? Absolute bliss.
As though she'd suddenly swallowed a bright piece of that late afternoon sun, and it burned in her bosom, sending out a little shower of sparks into every particle, into every finger and toe.
Oh, is there no way you can express it without being drunk and disorderly? How idiotic civilization is. Why be given a body if you have to keep it shut up in a case like a rare fiddle? No, that about the fiddle is not quite what I mean. It's not what I mean because... Thank you, Mary.
Yes, Mum.
Is Nurse back?
Yes, Mum.
And has the fruit come?
Yes, Mum, everything's come.
Bring the fruit up to the dining room, will you? I'll arrange it before I go upstairs.
It was dusky in the dining room and quite chilly. But all the same, Bertha threw off her coat. She could not bear the tight clasp of it another moment, and the cold air fell on her arms.
Shall I turn on the light, Mum?
No, thank you. I can see quite well.
When she had finished with them and had made 2 pyramids of these bright round shapes, she stood away from the table to get the effect, and it really was most curious, for the dark tables seemed to melt into the dusky light, and the glass dish and the blue bowl to float in the air.
No, I'm getting hysterical.
Nurse sat at a low table giving little Bee her supper after her bath. The baby had on a white flannel gown and a blue woolen jacket, and her dark, fine hair was brushed up into a funny little peak. She looked up when she saw her mother and began to jump.
Now, my lovey, eat it up like a good girl.
Has she been good, Nanny?
She's been a little sweet all the afternoon. We went to the park, and I sat down on a chair and took her out of the pram, and a big dog came along and put its head on my knee, and she clutched its ear, tugged it. Oh, you should have seen her.
Oh, Nanny, do let me finish giving her supper while you put the bath things away.
Well, she oughtn't to be changed hands while she's eating. It unsettles her. It's very likely to upset her.
Oh, I must.
Now don't excite her after her supper. You know you do, ma'am, and I have such a time with her after.
Now I've got you to myself, my little precious. You're nice, you're very nice. I'm fond of you. I like you.
You're wanted on the telephone.
Hello?
Oh, is that you, Bear? Look here. I'll be late. I'll take a taxi and come along as quickly as I can. But get dinner put back 10 minutes, will you? All right?
Yes, perfectly. Oh, Harry.
Yes?
Nothing. Intendo.
Bertha hung up the receiver, thinking how much more than idiotic civilization was. They had people coming to dinner. The Norman Knights, a very sound couple. He was about to start a theatre and she was awfully keen on interior decoration. A young man, Eddie Warren, who had just published a little book of poems and whom everybody was asking to dine, and a find of Bertha's called Pearl Fulton. What Miss Fulton did, Bertha didn't know. They had met at the club, and Bertha had fallen in love with her, as she always did fall in love with beautiful women who had something strange about them. The provoking thing was that though they had been about together and met a number of times and really talked, Bertha couldn't make her out. Up to a certain point, Miss Fulton was rarely, wonderfully frank, but the certain point was there, and beyond that, she would not go.
The cream of it was when she, being full-fed, turned to the woman beside her and said, "Haven't you ever seen a monkey before?"
It is the right house, isn't it?
Hello, you people.
How's the play?
Oh, what happy socks.
I am so glad you like them. They seem to have got so much whiter since the moon rose. There is a moon, you know.
I wonder if Miss Fulton has forgotten.
Ah, there's a taxi now.
Miss Fulton, all in silver with a silver fillet binding her pale blonde hair, came in smiling, her head a little on one side.
Am I late?
No, not at all. Come along.
What was there in the touch of that cool arm that could start blazing the fire of bliss that Bertha did not know what to do with? Harry was enjoying his dinner. It was part of his, well, not his nature exactly, and certainly not his pose, his something or other to talk about food and to glory in his shameless passion for the white flash of the lobster and the green of pistachio, ices green and cold like the eyelids of Egyptian dancers.
Bertha, this is a very admirable souffle.
With that from Harry, Bertha could have wept with childlike pleasure. Oh, why did Bertha feel so tender towards the whole world tonight? Everything was good, was right. All that happened seemed to fill again her brimming cup of bliss. And still in the back of her mind, there was their pear tree. It would be silver now in the light of poor dear Eddie's moon, silver as Miss Fulton, who sat there turning a tangerine in her slender fingers that were so pale a light seemed to come from them. They adjourned for coffee and dessert.
Come and see my new coffee machine.
We only have a new coffee machine once a fortnight.
Have you a garden?
Bertha opened the curtains,
There!
and the two women stood side by side, looking at the slender, flowering tree. Although it was so still, it seemed, like the flame of a candle, to stretch up, to point, to quiver in the bright air, to grow taller and taller as they gazed, almost to touch the rim of the round silver moon.
My dear Mrs. Knight, don't ask me about my baby. I never see her. I shan't feel the slightest interest in her until she has a lover.
Miss Fulton sank into the lowest, deepest chair and Harry handed round the cigarettes.
Egyptian, Turkish, Virginian, they're all mixed up.
Bertha realised that Miss Fulton not only bored Harry, he really disliked her.
No, thank you. I won't smoke.
Oh, Harry, don't dislike Miss Fulton. You are quite wrong about her. She's wonderful. Wonderful. And besides, how can you feel so differently about someone who means so much to me? I shall try to tell you when we are in bed tonight what has been happening, what she and I have shared.
At those last words, something strange and almost terrifying darted into Bertha's mind, and this something blind and smiling whispered to her, "Soon these people will go. The house will be quiet, quiet. The lights will be out, and you and he will be alone together in the dark room, the warm bed." Bertha jumped up from her chair and ran over to the piano.
What a pity someone does not play.
For the first time in her life, Bertha Young desired her husband. Oh, she'd loved him. She'd been in love with him, of course, in every other way, but just not in that way. And equally, of course, she'd understood that he was different. They'd discussed it so often. It had worried her dreadfully at first to find that she was so cold, but after a time it had not seemed to matter. They were so frank with each other, such good pals. That was the best of being modern.
Have a whiskey night before you go. No thanks, old chap.
As the evening came to a close, Bertha squeezed Mr. Knight's hand as she shook it. After seeing the Knights out, Bertha returned. When she got back into the drawing room, the others were on the move.
You can get a taxi at the rank just at the end of the street. You won't have to walk more than a few yards.
That's a comfort. I'll go and put on my coat.
Miss Fulton moved towards the hall, and Bertha was following when Harry almost pushed past.
Let me help you.
Bertha knew that he was repenting his rudeness. She let him go. What a boy he was in some ways, so impulsive, so simple.
I wonder if you have seen Bilks's new poem called Table d'Hôte.
Eddie asked Bertha.
It's so wonderful. In the last anthology. Have you got a copy? I'd so like to show it to you. It begins with an incredibly beautiful line. Why must it always be tomato soup?
Yes,
said Bertha, and she moved noiselessly to a table opposite the drawing-room door, and Eddie glided noiselessly after her. She picked up the little book and gave it to him. They had not made a sound. While Eddie looked it up, she turned her head towards the hall. And she saw Harry with Miss Fulton's coat in his arms, and Miss Fulton with her back turned to him and her head bent. He tossed the coat away, put his hands on her shoulders and turned her violently to him. His lips said,
I adore you.
and Miss Fulton laid her moonbeam fingers on his cheeks and smiled her sleepy smile. Harry's nostrils quivered. His lips curled back in a hideous grin while he whispered,
Tomorrow.
and Miss Fulton said.
Yes.
And at that moment when Bertha was learning new things she had never imagined, Eddie said,
Here it is. Why must it always be tomato soup? It's so deeply true, don't you feel? Tomato soup is so dreadfully eternal.
If you prefer, I can phone you a cab to come to the door.
Oh, no, it's not necessary.
Miss Fulton moved down the hall to Bertha and offered her slender fingers for her to hold.
Goodbye. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Miss Fulton held her hand a moment longer,
Your lovely pear tree.
and then she was gone, with Eddie following, like the black cat following the grey cat.
I'll shut up shop.
Your lovely pear tree.
Bertha simply ran over to the long windows.
Oh, what is going to happen now?
But the pear tree was as lovely as ever and as full of flower and as still. That concludes the radio play of Katherine Mansfield's Bliss. Thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe to this channel.